This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
You'll probably never get rabies, but that doesn't make it any less terrifying. The disease is virtually always fatal once symptoms emerge, and while we have some post-exposure treatments, they rely on getting to the doctor in time. So a much better solution would be to prevent rabies in the first place. And to do that, it's animals that we need to figure out a better solution for, because they're the ones who often transmit it to us, which is extra complicated when we want to curb the spread of rabies due to vampire bats. Since their whole deal is biting other animals, stopping them from spreading rabies along the way isn't easy. But new research shows the solution to vampire bat rabies might be an ingredient in your hot cocoa. Rabies is an RNA rhabdovirus found in the lyssavirus genus. It almost always passes to humans via an animal bite, and it can take days to months for symptoms to show up. These include headaches, vomiting, confusion, fear of water, and hallucinations, all of which are thanks to the virus infiltrating the central nervous system. Once symptoms do appear, the patient dies within 2 or 3 days of going to the hospital, basically 100% of the time. A last-ditch effort is the Milwaukee Protocol, where doctors put the patient into a medically induced coma, pump them with antivirals, and hope for the best. But only about a couple dozen people have survived, and they often have major neurological deficits after all's said and done. And it's not just human lives on the line. Cattle are frequent rabies victims, with economic impacts in the tens of millions of dollars. So preventing their infections could save their lives, and also all the beef, dairy, and money that comes with them. Which is why researchers have started looking into better ways to control rabies before it gets to us or to our cows. One of the major reservoirs for rabies, particularly in Latin America, is vampire bats. So many scientists have focused their rabies control efforts on those little bloodsuckers. Vampire bats den in close quarters. They love a good slobbery grooming session and have been known to regurgitate and share meals, which means rabies can spread through the colony faster than head lice in an elementary school. The other issue is their diet. Vampire bats are obligate sanguivores, meaning they only drink blood. So to chow down, they have to bite other animals like humans or cows, which is how they spread their rabies outside the bat colony. So if we could get a handle on the rabies in vampire bats, it would help control the disease among many species all at once. Also, to be clear, the bats aren't necessarily asymptomatic reservoirs of the disease. They can suffer and die from rabies too, which means that eradicating rabies in the bat populations would make them feel better in the process too. A lot of attempts at controlling bat rabies have taken the scorched earth approach of just killing as many of them as possible, since a dead bat can't bite. One of the most popular methods of bat murder takes advantage of their natural instinct to groom each other. Scientists apply anticoagulant paste to some of the bats' backs. Then, as they lick each other clean, that poison spreads all around the colony. Once they ingest the anticoagulant, their blood can't clot anymore. It's like if Buffy the Vampire Slayer swapped out her wooden stakes for topical warfarin. That method can kill essentially 100% of bats, so you can't say it isn't effective. But some researchers fear that once the bats notice group mates dying, they panic and scatter, which means any rabies they're carrying would spread beyond the group, potentially making the rabies problem worse. Plus, not everyone's on board with killing a bunch of bats or releasing warfarin paste into the environment. And we'd be in trouble if the bats took a page from the rats' playbook and started developing resistance to warfarin, which we know happens in other species when we try to use the drug as pest control. Luckily, bleeding hearts and worried scientists alike can rest assured that newer efforts have shifted toward vaccination, not elimination. But before we get to that, all research needs funding, even ours. So here's a quick ad break.
Thanks to Squarespace for supporting this SciShow video. We sell a ton of merch at Complexly, so we know how important a good online store is. On the Squarespace commerce platform, you can showcase your products and reviews and get paid all in one place. It's not just for t-shirts and mugs either. You can involve clients and put together proposals, estimates, and contracts on Squarespace too. Then, to reap the fruits of your labor, Squarespace Payments lets you give your customers more ways to pay. You can use all sorts of popular payment methods, from Apple Pay to ClearPay. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to www.squarespace.com/scishow to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain.
The idea of finding alternative rabies solutions besides vampiricide has been kicking around for a few decades now. But early attempts focused on capturing the bats, having them fast for a bit, then syringing vaccinated blood into their mouths. Which is fine, but since you can't capture every single bat and force feed them the vaccine, that solution doesn't scale very well. Baiting their food with the vaccine isn't an option, since, like I said, their diet is exclusively blood, straight from the source. And you can't bait a living animal with a high enough concentration of the vaccine that it's transmissible by blood. So these rabies vaccines need to look a little different, because not only is it impossible to catch and vaccinate every bat, they're also not the most compliant patients. That puts researchers at risk of being injured and getting rabies themselves. Instead, researchers want to revamp the same hack that's been used to spread poison, by getting bats vaxxed through grooming each other. A 2008 study looked at coating bats in literal Vaseline that had the rabies vaccine mixed in, and they found that in the lab, this did work to spread the immunity around. But subsequent experiments suggested that Vaseline, or really any petroleum jellies, might not be the right vehicle. For one thing, this vaccine needs to be stable in tropical climates, since the ideal place to roll it out would be Latin America. And when Vaseline gets too hot, it gets runny, meaning that it tends to just drip right off the bats. For another, the Vaseline itself isn't the best at preserving the vaccine's structural ingredients, meaning it gets degraded and won't work as well. Not to mention, have you ever licked Vaseline? It's not that great, and the bats didn't think so either. They've tried other mediums, like glycerin gel, but ran into a lot of the same problems, especially with melting. But the concept was solid, even if the gel wasn't, which is why an international team of researchers created their own special gel optimized for vaccine delivery. It was a customized carboxymethylcellulose, or CMC gel, essentially modified plant cellulose. CMC gels are already used in things like eye lubricants to help give them the right viscosity, so the researchers just tweaked it to be edible bat hair gel instead. And yes, CMC gels are edible for us, too. They're even used in hot cocoa to give your drink that perfect mouthfeel. The researchers mixed the vaccine into the CMC gel and added a fluorescent biomarker. That way they could come back to snag some bat hair samples, check for fluorescence, and quickly determine if the bats ingested the vaccine or not. They estimated that they applied the paste to around 1/5 of the colony. After releasing them back into the group and letting them lick away for a while, the researchers checked for fluorescence to see how many bats got their dose of vaccine from grooming. Based on that sample, they estimated that 88% of the colony slurped up some vaccine and was now immune to rabies. Each of the initial treated bats spread the gel to more than 3 other bats on average, which was better than in their earlier gel formulations, and way better than vaccinating bats one at a time by hand. It was a huge improvement over previous versions and worked well even at hotter temperatures. The cherry on top is that mathematical models suggest this kinder method could be even more effective than the previous gold standard of kill the dang things. The researchers hope that this approach to immunization continues to be investigated in field studies or even applied to other species of bats. So hopefully in the future, bats will start taking a bite or a lick out of their own rabies problem. I'd raise a cup of cocoa to that.